I'm Amber, 29, and last month I achieved my biggest dream, paying off my house completely. No mortgage, no debt, just mine. I worked overtime for 5 years, sacrificing vacations and luxuries for this moment. But my celebration was cut short when my brother Jason and his wife Stephanie showed up unannounced on my doorstep. With a cold smile, Stephanie declared my house family property and announced they'd be moving in within 2 weeks. The shock on my face didn't faze her. Now I had to fight for what was rightfully mine. Before I dive into this nightmare, where are you watching from? Hit like and subscribe to join me on this wild journey of family betrayal. Growing up, financial stability was a foreign concept in our household. My parents, while loving, never mastered money management. Dad worked construction, with income fluctuating seasonally, while Mom picked up retail shifts when possible. Bill collectors called constantly, and the power was shut off more times than I could count. The worst was watching my parents' perpetual anxiety about making rent each month. By age 14, I started babysitting to buy my own school supplies. At 16, I balanced high school with a part-time job at the local diner. My brother Jason, 3 years older, took a different approach. While I saved every penny, he spent freely, assuming things would work out somehow. Despite our different attitudes toward money, we remained close. Jason was charismatic and fun, qualities I admired despite his financial carelessness. My parents' financial struggles shaped my determination. I promised myself I'd never live paycheck to paycheck or feel that constant knot of money anxiety. While friends partied through college, I worked 2 jobs alongside my marketing classes. My roommates thought I was extreme, declining dinners out and shopping trips, but every dollar saved brought me closer to my goal. After graduation, I landed an entry-level marketing position at a local firm. My starting salary wasn't impressive, but combined with my savings, it allowed me to rent a small apartment while continuing to save aggressively. I created detailed spreadsheets tracking every expense, celebrating small victories when I exceeded my monthly savings goals. 3 years after graduation, at 25, I had enough for a down payment on a modest 2-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't fancy, built in the 1970s with outdated wallpaper and worn carpets, but it was structurally sound with good bones. The mortgage payments would be less than my rent, and more importantly, every payment would build equity rather than disappear to a landlord. Signing those mortgage papers was terrifying and exhilarating. The loan officer seemed surprised by my age and lack of cosigner, but my excellent credit score and solid down payment spoke for themselves. Walking through the empty rooms afterward, I felt a pride I'd never experienced before. This place was mine, or would be, once I conquered the 30-year mortgage. But I had no intention of paying for 3 decades. I immediately created an accelerated payment plan, adding extra to the principal each month. I took on freelance marketing projects, working evenings and weekends. I renovated slowly, learning to replace that hideous wallpaper and install new flooring through YouTube tutorials rather than hiring professionals. My small circle of friends understood my mission. My best friend Tara helped with painting parties in exchange for homemade dinner. My colleague Mark connected me with freelance clients. They celebrated my progress without judgment about my frugality. Over 5 years, I transformed both the house and my career. I earned promotions at work, each salary increase going directly toward my mortgage rather than lifestyle upgrades. I drove the same reliable Honda I'd had since college. Vacations were affordable weekend trips rather than exotic getaways. Every sacrifice felt worthwhile as I watched my mortgage balance shrink. When I made that final payment last month, I was overcome with emotion. The house, freshly painted, with refinished hardwood floors and a kitchen I had gradually modernized, was 100% mine at age 29. No bank could take it away. No landlord could raise the rent. I had created the security I'd craved since childhood. The contrast between my current stability and my parents' constant financial chaos wasn't lost on me. I had broken the cycle. Little did I know that my achievement would trigger a family crisis I never saw coming. My brother Jason had always been the golden child, charming, athletic, and popular throughout school. Despite our different approaches to finances, we maintained a decent relationship into adulthood. He'd tease me about being too serious with money, while I'd lecture him about his credit card debt. It was sibling banter, nothing malicious. Jason worked in sales, his outgoing personality serving him well, though his spending habits typically outpaced his commission checks. Then he met Stephanie at a company event 3 years ago. Their whirlwind romance led to marriage within 6 months. From our first meeting, something about Stephanie set me on edge. She had a calculating way of assessing people, as if determining their value to her. With her carefully highlighted blonde hair and designer clothes, Stephanie projected an image of affluence that seemed important to her identity. "Your brother deserves the best," she told me at their engagement party, eyeing my simple dress. "I'm so glad he found someone who understands his worth." The implied comparison wasn't subtle. Throughout the wedding planning, Stephanie frequently mentioned her family's country club membership and vacation home in the Hamptons. Yet something didn't add up. If her family was so wealthy, why were my parents contributing significantly to the wedding costs? After the wedding, Jason changed. Our casual weekly phone calls dwindled. When we did speak, he'd drop references to their exotic vacations, the luxury car they'd leased, or the exclusive restaurants they frequented. Meanwhile, I'd hear from my parents about Jason asking for loans to cover temporary cash flow issues. I visited their apartment once for dinner, a sleek high-rise with floor-to-ceiling windows and concierge service. The place was impeccably decorated with artwork and designer furniture that seemed excessive for a young couple just starting out. When I complimented a sculpture, Stephanie launched into its provenance and price point, watching for my reaction. "We believe in investing in quality," she said, though I noticed the designer shopping bags barely hidden in the guest room, suggesting these investments were ongoing rather than carefully saved for. Jason pulled me aside while Stephanie prepared dessert. "Things are a little tight right now," he admitted, voice low. "Stephanie's used to a certain lifestyle. Her family talks big, but they're not actually helping us financially. Don't tell her I told you that." I offered budgeting help, but he laughed it off. "We'll figure it out. A big commission is coming soon." Over the next year, I noticed Stephanie's increasing interest in my house. During family gatherings, she'd ask probing questions about my mortgage rate and property taxes. At first, I thought she was just making conversation, but her attention to detail seemed excessive. "You know, in this market, you could sell and make a substantial profit," she mentioned during Thanksgiving dinner last year. "Why stay in such a modest place when you could upgrade?" "I love my house," I replied simply. "It's perfect for me." She exchanged a look with Jason I couldn't quite interpret. At Christmas, the tension grew when my parents proudly announced my mortgage was nearly paid off. While my parents beamed, Stephanie's congratulations seemed forced. "Family should help family succeed," she said, glass of wine in hand. "Jason and I have been discussing investment properties. Perhaps we should pool our resources." I changed the subject, uncomfortable with her implication. Later, I overheard her telling Jason, "It's ridiculous that she has that whole house to herself while we're cramped in an apartment we can barely afford." By spring, their financial situation had apparently deteriorated. Jason called asking if I knew of any rentals in my neighborhood. "Our lease is up next month, and they're raising the rent again," he explained. "We need to find something cheaper." I suggested some nearby apartment complexes, but Stephanie got on the phone and dismissed them all as beneath their standards. The conversation ended awkwardly, with Stephanie huffing that families should look out for each other. 2 weeks later, my parents mentioned that Jason and Stephanie had asked to borrow money for a security deposit on a new place. "We gave them what we could," Mom said worriedly. "But it's not much. Your father and I are on a fixed income now." I felt a pang of guilt mixed with frustration. I could help them financially, but I'd seen how Stephanie's spending habits drained their resources. Any money I gave would likely go toward maintaining appearances rather than building stability. What I didn't realize then was that Stephanie had already formulated a plan, one that involved my house and excluded my consent. The day after making my final mortgage payment, I hosted a small mortgage burning party. Tara brought champagne, Mark baked a cake shaped like a house, and my colleague Diana gifted me a doormat reading "Home Sweet Home, Actually Mine." We gathered around my fire pit as I ceremoniously burned a copy of my mortgage statement, all of us cheering as the paper curled and blackened in the flames. To financial freedom, Tara toasted, raising her glass. "You did it, girl." We celebrated late into the evening, my heart full of pride and gratitude for these friends who understood what this milestone meant to me. None of my family attended. I'd invited my parents, but they were visiting my aunt in Florida. I hadn't invited Jason and Stephanie, wanting to avoid Stephanie's inevitable backhanded compliments. The next morning, nursing a mild champagne headache, I was startled by insistent knocking at my front door. Opening it revealed Jason and Stephanie standing on my porch, both wearing forced smiles. "Surprise!" Stephanie chirped, pushing past me into the house without waiting for an invitation. "We heard you had a little celebration yesterday." Jason followed, giving me an awkward side hug. "Congrats, sis. That's a big achievement." I thanked them, confused by their unexpected visit as they made themselves comfortable in my living room. Stephanie's eyes scanned every corner of the space, lingering on the renovations I'd completed. "You've done so much with the place," she remarked. "It must be worth quite a bit more than what you paid." "I suppose so," I replied cautiously. "But I'm not planning to sell." "Of course not," Stephanie said, exchanging a look with Jason. "Family property is so important to preserve." I froze. "Family property? This is my house, Stephanie. I bought it and paid for it myself." She waved her hand dismissively. "Yes, technically. But don't you believe family should share resources? Jason is your brother, after all." Jason shifted uncomfortably but nodded. "We've been thinking, Amber. That apartment is draining us dry, and you have this whole house with an extra bedroom that's just sitting empty." Before I could respond, Stephanie continued, her tone matter-of-fact. "So we've decided to move in with you. It makes perfect sense. You can have the master bedroom, of course, and we'll take the second bedroom. We can split utilities 3 ways, which will help us all save money." My jaw literally dropped. "Excuse me? You've decided?" "We've already given notice on our apartment," Jason added. "The lease is up in 2 weeks. Stephanie nodded, as if everything was settled. "We'll start moving our things this weekend. We don't have much furniture since most of it came with the apartment, but we'll need to fit our clothes and personal items." Blood rushed to my face as I stood up. "Wait a minute. You can't just decide to move into my house without asking me." Stephanie's expression hardened. "It's family property, Amber. Jason is entitled to benefit from it too. You're being selfish by keeping it all to yourself when we're struggling." "That's not how property ownership works," I stated firmly. "I bought this house. I paid for it. I'm the only name on the deed." "So legalistic," Stephanie said with a disappointed sigh. "Is this really how you treat family? Your brother has always supported you. Now when he needs help, you turn your back on him?" Jason looked torn but added, "Amber, we're not asking for ownership. Just to share the space. You wouldn't even notice us most of the time." I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "Jason, I love you, but this is my home. I'm not looking for roommates. If you need financial help finding a new apartment, we can discuss that, but you cannot move in here." Stephanie's face contorted with anger. "After everything your brother has done for you? This is how you repay family loyalty? By hoarding your resources? What exactly has Jason done for me?" I asked pointedly. "I've been financially independent since college. I bought this house on my own. I paid it off through hard work and sacrifice." "We're family," Jason repeated weakly. "Family helps family." "Yes, and I'm willing to help, just not by having you move in," I insisted. "This conversation is over. I think you both should leave now." Stephanie stood, grabbing her designer purse. This isn't over, Amber. You'll realize how unreasonable you're being. We'll be back this weekend to start moving in. You'll come around. No, I won't, I said firmly, walking to the door and holding it open. Do not bring your belongings here. You are not moving in. Period. As they left, Stephanie turned back. Blood is thicker than water, Amber. Don't forget that. After closing the door behind them, I leaned against it, shaking with anger and disbelief. The audacity was stunning. My moment of triumph had been hijacked by their entitlement. Little did I know, this confrontation was just the opening salvo in what would become a family war over my house. In the days following Stephanie and Jason's shocking announcement, I tried repeatedly to speak with my brother alone. I called, texted, and even emailed him at work, hoping to have a reasonable conversation without Stephanie's influence. His responses were frustratingly evasive. Now's not a good time, he'd text. We can talk this weekend when we come by, read another message. When I explicitly stated they were not to bring their belongings to my house, he replied, Steph says you'll change your mind once you see how helpful we can be around the house. It was as if he wasn't hearing me at all. Frustrated, I finally sent a clear, firm message, Jason, to be absolutely clear. You and Stephanie do not have permission to move into my house. This is not negotiable. If you show up with moving trucks, I will not let you in. Please respect my decision. He didn't respond. 2 days later, Tara called me. Have you seen Stephanie's Facebook posts? She asked, concern evident in her voice. I hadn't. After opening Facebook, my stomach dropped. Stephanie had spent the last 48 hours crafting a narrative of family betrayal. Without naming me directly, she posted dramatic statements about family members who achieved success and then abandoned those who supported them all along. One post read, "It's sad when someone gets a little financial security and suddenly forgets the meaning of family. Praying for a certain someone to remember where they came from and open their heart and home." The comments section was filled with sympathetic responses, including several from extended family members I rarely spoke with. My cousin Rachel had written, "That's terrible. Family should always come first." Within hours, my phone began ringing with calls from relatives. My Aunt Barbara demanded to know why I was turning my back on family. My Uncle Dave suggested I was being selfish with my blessings. None of them had the full story, but all felt entitled to weigh in. Jason told me you promised them they could stay with you until they found a new place, my Aunt Meredith said accusingly. Now they're scrambling with nowhere to go. That's absolutely false, I replied, shocked. I never offered my home. They announced they were moving in without even asking me. That's not how Jason tells it, she responded skeptically. This pattern repeated with each call. Somehow, Jason and Stephanie had convinced my extended family that I had offered my home and then cruelly rescinded the offer, leaving them desperate. The manipulation was both impressive and horrifying. My parents called from Florida, confused by the family uproar. "What's going on, Amber?" Mom asked. "We're getting strange messages about you and your brother." I explained the situation fully, relieved when they seemed to understand my position. "Of course it's your house, honey," Dad said. "You worked hard for it." But their support wavered when I mentioned Jason and Stephanie's financial troubles. "Maybe you could let them stay just for a little while?" Mom suggested. "Just until they find something else?" "They're adults with jobs," I reminded her. "They can find an apartment like everyone else." The pressure intensified when I received a text from Jason with a photo of a moving truck rental confirmation for the coming Saturday. "See you this weekend, sis. We're bringing donuts for breakfast." The audacity left me speechless. They were actually going through with their plan to move in without my consent. That evening, I received another disturbing piece of news. My neighbor Helen called to tell me she'd overheard Stephanie at the local coffee shop, talking loudly on her phone. She was telling someone they'd already given notice on their apartment, Helen reported. Said they'd be moving in with you this weekend, whether you liked it or not. I thought you should know. My anxiety skyrocketed. They had actually surrendered their apartment based on their assumption they could force their way into my home. Their plan wasn't just presumptuous, it was desperate. I called Tara in tears. I don't know what to do, I admitted. They're really planning to show up with all their stuff. Then you need to be ready, she said firmly. This is your house, Amber. You paid for it. You don't owe them a place to live. But they've given up their apartment, I said. What if they really have nowhere to go? That's a problem they created, Tara pointed out. They're adults who made a decision based on an assumption you repeatedly told them was wrong. Their housing crisis is not your emergency. Her words crystallized something for me. Throughout my life, I'd made careful, responsible decisions while watching others make impulsive choices and expect bailouts. This was no different. Jason and Stephanie had created this situation through entitlement and poor planning. I was not responsible for solving it. That night, I drafted a clear email to both of them, copying my parents. Jason and Stephanie. I want to state one final time, in writing, that you do not have my permission to move into my house. I have never offered my house as a place for you to live. Any claims to the contrary are false. If you arrive on Saturday with your belongings, you will not be allowed entry. This is not a negotiation. I am willing to help you find a new apartment and can offer financial assistance with a security deposit as a gift. I cannot and will not offer my home. Please confirm receipt of this email and your understanding of my position. Amber. Jason's reply came an hour later, but it wasn't what I hoped for. We'll discuss this in person on Saturday. Stephanie says this is just pre-moving jitters on your part. It's going to be fine once we're all settled in. Family takes care of family. It was clear they were still planning to move forward with their scheme. With a heavy heart, I realized I needed to prepare for a confrontation that could permanently damage my relationship with my brother. But I couldn't back down, my home was at stake. Saturday morning arrived with ominous gray clouds matching my mood. I barely slept, anxious about the confrontation to come. Would they really show up? Would they try to force their way in? The uncertainty had my stomach in knots. Tara had offered to come over for moral support, but I declined. This was a family matter I needed to handle myself, though I appreciated knowing she was just a phone call away. I'd spent Friday evening preparing, changing my Wi-Fi password, securing valuable documents in a locked file cabinet, and making sure my home security app was functioning properly. These precautions felt extreme, but Stephanie and Jason's behavior had pushed me beyond normal family dynamics into territory that required protection. At 9:17 a.m., the rumble of an engine drew me to my living room window. A medium-sized moving truck pulled up in front of my house, with Jason's SUV right behind it. My heart pounded as I watched them park. This was really happening. I stepped onto my porch as Jason, Stephanie, and two men I didn't recognize exited their vehicles. Stephanie wore an inappropriately dressy outfit for moving day, while Jason looked uncomfortable in jeans and a t-shirt. "Good morning," Stephanie called out cheerfully, as if this were a planned, welcome visit. "We brought help to make this quick and easy." I crossed my arms. "There's nothing to move in, Stephanie. As I've repeatedly told you, you are not living here." Jason approached the porch steps. "Amber, don't make this difficult. We need to be out of our apartment by noon." "That's not my problem," I stated firmly. "I've been clear from the beginning that you cannot move in here. Your poor planning doesn't constitute an emergency for me." Stephanie laughed lightly, addressing the movers. "Family squabbles, you know how it is. Let's start with the boxes in the truck." "Stop," I commanded loudly. "Do not unload anything. These people do not have permission to move into my house." The movers looked uncertainly between us, clearly uncomfortable with the tension. Stephanie's fake smile faltered. "Jason, give me the key. We can discuss this inside." My blood ran cold. "What key?" Jason looked at the ground. The spare key Mom and Dad keep for emergencies. The violation hit me like a physical blow. You took their spare key without my permission? We made a copy, Stephanie corrected, as if that made it better. We knew you might be difficult about this transition. I pulled out my phone. I'm calling the police if you try to enter my house. Don't be dramatic, Stephanie snapped, her pleasant facade cracking. This is family business. It's trespassing, I countered. This is my property, not family property. I've made that abundantly clear. The movers exchanged glances, clearly realizing they'd been brought into a problematic situation. Look, lady, one of them said to Stephanie. We don't do disputed moves. If the homeowner says no, we can't unload here. She's just being stubborn, Stephanie insisted, her voice rising. Once we get settled, she'll calm down. While they argued with the movers, Jason approached me, speaking quietly. Amber, please. We really don't have anywhere else to go. Just for a few weeks? You've had weeks to find a new place, I reminded him. Instead, you decided to try to force your way into my home. That's not how family treats each other. The movers began returning to their truck, unwilling to participate further. Stephanie noticed and stormed up to the porch where I stood. You're making a scene in front of your neighbors, she hissed, gesturing to several curious faces watching from nearby houses. You created this scene, I replied evenly. I've been consistent and clear from the beginning. Stephanie's face contorted with rage. Move aside, she ordered, attempting to push past me toward my door, purse clutched tightly as if it contained the copied key. I stood my ground. Do not touch me. You are not entering my house. Jason hurried up the steps. Steph, stop. This isn't helping. She whirled on him. Are you going to let your sister leave us homeless? After everything we've done for her? What exactly have you done for me? I asked, genuinely curious. Stephanie sputtered, unable to name anything specific. Family supports family. Yes, but support doesn't mean letting people walk all over you, I replied. I offered financial help to find a new place. You refused and tried to take over my home instead. The movers had returned to their truck, clearly waiting for resolution before deciding whether to leave or unload. This is ridiculous, Stephanie fumed, pulling something from her purse. With horror, I realized it was indeed a key, the unauthorized copy they'd made. She lunged toward my door. That's it, I said, stepping back and dialing 911 on my phone. I'm calling the police. You wouldn't dare, Stephanie sneered, key poised at my lock. 911, what's your emergency? Came the dispatcher's voice, loud enough for everyone to hear. I need to report people attempting to enter my home without permission, I said clearly. They have an unauthorized copy of my key and are trying to move in against my wishes. Jason paled. Amber, don't do this. Give me the key, Stephanie, I demanded, hand outstretched. She looked between me, the phone, and the growing audience of neighbors. For a moment, I thought she might actually try to unlock the door anyway, but Jason grabbed her arm. Steph, stop. It's not worth getting arrested. The dispatcher asked for my address, which I provided, explaining that the situation was tense but not yet violent. Officers are on their way, the dispatcher informed me. Please stay on the line. Stephanie finally backed down, though her glare could have melted steel. This isn't over, she warned, stuffing the key back into her purse. Yes, it is, I replied firmly. And I want that key. We're leaving, Jason said hurriedly, pulling Stephanie toward their SUV. Tell them not to come. I need to know you're actually leaving and won't return today, I told the dispatcher. They're getting in their vehicle now. The movers, seeing the drama unfold, quickly closed the truck's rear door. One approached me cautiously. Ma'am, we're sorry about this. They told us everyone was on board with the move. Not your fault, I assured him. 15 minutes later, a police cruiser pulled up just as Jason and Stephanie were arguing beside their SUV, their moving truck already gone. The officers approached and asked for an explanation. I explained the situation concisely. My brother and his wife had decided they were moving into my house without permission, had made an unauthorized copy of my key, and had shown up with movers despite my explicit refusal. The officers spoke with Jason and Stephanie separately, then returned to me. They claimed there was a misunderstanding about an invitation to stay with you, one officer explained. There was no invitation, I stated firmly. I have emails and texts clearly stating they could not move in. The officer nodded. We've advised them that this is a civil matter, but they cannot enter your property without permission. If they attempt to do so, they could be charged with trespassing. What about the unauthorized key they made? I asked. We've requested they turn it over, he replied, holding up a key. They complied. Relief washed over me as the officers returned to Jason and Stephanie, who were now loading boxes from their SUV back into the truck. Minutes later, both vehicles drove away, leaving me standing on my porch with a strange mixture of triumph and devastation. My home was secure, but the cost had been steep. The look of betrayal on Jason's face as they drove away would haunt me. Yet I knew I'd done the right thing. Sometimes protecting yourself means making difficult choices, even when family is involved. What I didn't realize was that today's confrontation wasn't the end of their campaign, it was merely the beginning of a more insidious attack. The immediate threat of a physical takeover had been thwarted, but the aftermath proved equally challenging in different ways. The day after the moving truck incident, I woke to dozens of missed calls and messages from family members. Word had spread quickly, with Stephanie's version of events painting me as the villain who had promised them housing and then cruelly changed my mind at the last minute, leaving them homeless. How could you call the police on your own brother? Demanded my cousin Rachel in a voicemail. Your parents raised you better than this, wrote my Aunt Meredith in a scathing text. The family pressure was intense and constant. Even my parents, who initially supported my position, began wavering after speaking with Jason. Maybe you could compromise? Mom suggested during our phone call. Just for a month or two until they find something else. They had months to find something else, I reminded her. Instead, they tried to force their way into my house. Dad sighed heavily. Jason says they're staying in a motel that's eating up their savings. He sounds really desperate, honey. The guilt trips were relentless, but I stood firm. This was my home, purchased and maintained through years of sacrifice and hard work. I wouldn't surrender it to emotional manipulation. 3 days after the confrontation, strange things began happening. I noticed unfamiliar cars driving slowly past my house in the evenings. Twice, I received food deliveries I hadn't ordered, with the delivery people insisting someone had placed the orders in my name. The second delivery person showed me the order. It included my correct phone number but listed Amber, homeless bitch, as the name. I installed security cameras that weekend, positioning them to cover all approaches to my house. The peace of mind they provided was worth every penny, especially when I received an anonymous text reading, "Enjoy your empty house while you can. Family always finds a way in." The harassment extended beyond my home. Negative reviews suddenly appeared on my company's Google business page, claiming I had been unprofessional and rude to clients, all posted by anonymous users in the days following the confrontation. My boss called me in for a concerning conversation about our online reputation management, though thankfully he seemed skeptical that these sudden negative reviews were legitimate. One evening, I discovered that someone had created a fake social media profile using my name and photo, with posts claiming I was suffering from mental health issues and making delusional claims about family members. The profile had already connected with several of my relatives before I reported and had it removed. The most disturbing development came when I received a call from my neighbor Helen. "Amber, I thought you should know, that woman, your brother's wife, was talking to the mailman today, claiming she lived at your address but had lost her key. She asked if he'd seen you because you weren't answering your phone." A chill ran down my spine. Stephanie was clearly not giving up on her plan to claim my house. That night, my doorbell rang at 11:43 p.m. Checking my security camera, I saw Jason standing on my porch, swaying slightly. I spoke through the doorbell's intercom feature. "Jason, it's almost midnight. What are you doing here?" "Need to talk to you," he slurred. "Let me in, Amber." "You're drunk," I observed. "Go home, Jason." "Don't have a home," he replied bitterly. "Thanks to you." "That's not fair and you know it," I said firmly. "I'm not having this conversation now. Please leave before I have to call the police again." He stared directly into the camera. "Stephanie was right about you. You only care about yourself." The unfairness of this accusation stung. "Jason, I offered to help you find a new place. I offered financial assistance. What I didn't offer was to let you take over my home. There's a difference." "Whatever helps you sleep at night," he muttered before stumbling back to his car. I immediately called the police to report a potentially drunk driver, giving them Jason's license plate number and direction. I couldn't let him hurt himself or others, regardless of our conflict. The psychological toll was mounting. I found myself checking my security cameras constantly, jumping at unexpected sounds, and struggling to focus at work. The sense of safety I'd felt in my home, the very reason I'd worked so hard to secure it, was eroding under the constant siege. Seeking guidance, I consulted with a lawyer friend, Mark, who specialized in property law. After hearing the full story, he shook his head in disbelief. "You've done nothing wrong legally," he assured me. "Your house is your property, not family property. That concept doesn't exist in real estate law." "What about their harassment?" I asked. "Document everything," he advised. "Every call, text, social media post, drive-by, everything. If it escalates, we can file for a restraining order." I began keeping meticulous records, saving screenshots, recording dates and times of every incident. The documentation helped me regain some sense of control, though the situation remained deeply upsetting. A week after the moving truck incident, my parents finally returned from Florida. They came directly to my house, concerned about the family rift that had developed in their absence. "We spoke with Jason yesterday," Mom said, sitting at my kitchen table. "He and Stephanie are staying at that extended stay motel on Highway 16. They say they're almost out of money." "I'm sorry to hear that," I replied sincerely. "But that doesn't change my position. They created this situation." "We know, honey," Dad said, looking troubled. "But their family. Isn't there some compromise possible?" The continued pressure, even from my parents, was exhausting. "Would you let them move into your house?" I asked pointedly. My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. "Our place is too small," Mom hedged. "That's not what I asked," I persisted. "If you had the space, would you want Stephanie controlling your home?" Dad sighed. "She can be difficult." "Exactly," I said. "This isn't just about space. It's about boundaries and respect, neither of which they've shown me." The conversation ended in an uneasy truce. My parents didn't fully support my position, but they better understood my reasoning. That night, I received an email from Jason that chilled me to the bone. "Amber, Stephanie isn't well. The stress of our housing situation has triggered something in her. She's fixated on your house and convinced herself it belongs to us. I'm worried about what she might do. Maybe if you could just talk to her." The message felt manipulative, designed to make me let down my guard out of concern. Yet a small part of me worried there might be truth to it. Was Stephanie unstable? Could she be dangerous? I forwarded the email to Mark, who responded quickly. "This looks like emotional manipulation to me. They're trying a new angle since direct confrontation didn't work. Stay firm. Don't meet with them alone, and keep your security systems active." His assessment resonated with my instincts. This was yet another tactic in their campaign to wear me down. The realization that my own brother would stoop to such manipulation tactics was painful, but it strengthened my resolve. I would not surrender my home, my sanctuary, to people who would use such underhanded methods to take it from me. What I needed now was leverage, something to break the stalemate and end their harassment once and for all. Little did I know that an unexpected source would soon provide exactly what I needed. 3 weeks into this draining standoff, I received a call from an unfamiliar number during my lunch break at work. Normally I'd let unknown numbers go to voicemail, but something compelled me to answer. "Is this Amber?" a male voice asked cautiously. "Yes, who's this?" "My name is Tom Ramirez. I work with your brother Jason at Pinnacle Sales." He paused awkwardly. "I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from the company directory where Jason listed you as his emergency contact." My guard immediately went up. "Is Jason okay?" "He's fine, physically," Tom assured me. "But I have some information you should know. It's about your situation with him and his wife. Could we meet somewhere private? I don't feel comfortable discussing this over the phone." Suspicion and curiosity battled within me. Was this another manipulation tactic? Or could this colleague actually have valuable information? "How do I know this isn't some trick?" I asked bluntly. "Fair question," Tom acknowledged. "Jason doesn't know I'm contacting you. I've overheard things at work that, well, they don't sit right with me. I think you're being taken advantage of, and I have proof." After careful consideration, I agreed to meet Tom at a coffee shop in the next town over, far enough away that I wouldn't likely run into Jason or Stephanie. I arrived early, selecting a table with a clear view of the entrance and exit. At precisely 5:30, a man in his mid-30s in business casual attire entered, scanning the room until his eyes landed on me. He approached hesitantly. "Amber?" "I'm Tom." I gestured to the seat across from me. "Thanks for coming. You said you have information?" Tom glanced around nervously before sitting down. "I've worked with Jason for 3 years. We're not close friends, but we're friendly enough that he talks to me." He pulled out his phone. "The thing is, what he's been saying about your house situation doesn't add up." "How so?" "For months, he's been talking about financial problems. Their apartment was too expensive, they were maxed out on credit cards. But then a few weeks ago, he started telling everyone you'd agreed to let them move in with you temporarily." I stiffened. "That's completely false." "I figured," Tom nodded. "Then last week, after everything fell apart, he was venting in the break room about how you'd betrayed them. But when he was talking to our manager later, I overheard something disturbing." Tom swiped through his phone and pulled up a text message thread. "Jason has been texting me about their plan. At first, I thought he was just venting, but it's gone way beyond that." He handed me his phone. The texts from Jason painted a disturbing picture. "Tom, we're going to solve our money problems soon. Amber's house is the perfect solution. Plan is to move in temporarily then gradually take over. She's single, doesn't need all that space. Stephanie says once we're established there, it'll be hard for Amber to make us leave. Tenant rights and all that. If things go well, maybe we can convince Amber to add us to the deed. Family property makes more sense than her hoarding it." My hands shook as I scrolled through message after message, each more calculating than the last. The most recent ones were sent after the failed moving attempt. "Stephanie's not giving up. Says we can make Amber's life so miserable she'll eventually give in just for peace. We're hemorrhaging money at this motel, but Steph says it'll be worth it once we get the house." I looked up at Tom, stunned. They were never planning to just stay temporarily. This was a calculated takeover attempt. Tom nodded grimly. "There's more. Jason confided that they're not just having money problems, they're facing bankruptcy. Stephanie has a serious shopping addiction. They're at least $95,000 in credit card debt, most of it from her designer clothes and furniture purchases." "Why are you showing me this?" I asked, though I was immensely grateful. Tom sighed. "I have a sister who was in an emotionally abusive relationship. Her ex used similar manipulation tactics, gaslighting, triangulation, recruiting others to pressure her. When I heard how Jason and Stephanie were turning your family against you while trying to take your house, it reminded me of what my sister went through. I couldn't stay silent. He pulled out a USB drive. I've saved screenshots of all the relevant texts, plus emails Jason sent from his work account discussing their plans. There's also a recording from our last team happy hour where he openly talked about their strategy to wear you down until you surrendered the house. I took the USB drive, overcome with emotion. Thank you. You have no idea what this means. I should warn you, Tom added, they're getting desperate. The motel is expensive, and from what Jason said, they're running out of options. Stephanie was at the office yesterday, and I overheard her saying they might need to escalate things to force your hand. Escalate how? I asked, alarmed. She didn't specify, but it didn't sound good. Just, be careful. After thanking Tom again, I drove straight to Mark's office with the USB drive. Together, we reviewed the evidence, which was even more damning than Tom had suggested. There were detailed discussions of their plan, including Stephanie's research into tenant rights and how difficult it would be to evict family members once they established residency. This is exactly what we needed, Mark said, expression serious. With this evidence, we can file for a restraining order if necessary. We can also use it to clear your name with your family. I can't believe they were actually plotting to take my house, I said, still processing the shocking revelation. Unfortunately, it happens more often than you'd think, Mark replied. Family financial disputes can bring out the worst in people. That evening, I pored over all the evidence, formulating a strategy. The extent of Jason and Stephanie's deception was staggering. They had never intended a temporary stay, their plan had always been to move in, establish residency, and gradually push me out of my own home. The psychological warfare, the family pressure campaign, the manipulation, it was all part of a calculated scheme to take what I had worked so hard to achieve. Most shocking was a message from Jason to Tom after a particularly difficult day. Stephanie says once we're in, we'll make living there so uncomfortable for Amber that she'll eventually move out herself. Then the house problem is solved. The betrayal cut deep. This was my own brother, plotting to drive me from my home. But now I had something they didn't, the truth, with evidence to back it up. It was time to end their campaign once and for all. Rather than continuing to play defense, I decided to confront them directly, but on my terms, with preparation and protection. I called Jason that night. We need to talk. All of us. I want you and Stephanie to come to my house tomorrow evening at 7. Finally coming to your senses? He asked, a note of triumph in his voice. Let's just say I'm ready to discuss a resolution, I replied neutrally. But this is the only chance we'll have to work things out directly. After this, any communication will go through my lawyer. Lawyer? Jason sputtered. This is family business, Amber. 7 p.m. tomorrow, I repeated. Don't be late. As I hung up, a strange calm settled over me. For weeks, I'd been on the defensive, reacting to their attacks. Now I was taking control of the narrative. With the evidence Tom had provided, I could finally end this nightmare and reclaim not just my house, but my peace of mind. The stage was set for the final confrontation. Little did Jason and Stephanie know, their carefully constructed scheme was about to collapse entirely. The day of the meeting, I prepared meticulously. I asked Tara to be in my guest room during the confrontation, close enough to hear if I needed help, but not directly involved in the conversation. I set up my phone to record the entire meeting and placed it visibly on the coffee table. I also printed key screenshots from Tom's evidence, organizing them in a folder within easy reach. My home, which had felt like a fortress under siege for weeks, was now the battleground where I would make my final stand. I felt strangely calm, empowered by the truth and ready to reclaim my peace. At 7:03 p.m., my doorbell rang. Through the security camera, I saw Jason and Stephanie standing on my porch. Stephanie wore an expression of smug satisfaction, clearly believing I'd finally capitulated. Jason looked tense but hopeful. I opened the door and gestured them inside without the usual pleasantries. They settled on my couch while I took the armchair opposite them, the coffee table between us creating a symbolic boundary. "Thank you for coming," I began formally. "I've asked you here because this situation needs to end today." Stephanie smiled triumphantly. "I'm glad you've finally seen reason, Amber. Family should stick together." "I completely agree," I replied evenly. "Family should be honest and supportive. Family shouldn't scheme to steal someone's home." Her smile faltered slightly. "That's a harsh characterization. We just want to share resources during our temporary difficulties." I picked up my phone and tapped the screen. "Let me play something for you." Jason's voice filled the room. "The plan is working. Amber's getting pressure from all sides. Stephanie thinks she'll crack within 2 weeks, then we're in. Once we establish residency, it'll be nearly impossible for her to kick us out." The color drained from Jason's face. Stephanie's expression hardened. "Where did you get that?" she demanded. "I have much more," I replied calmly, placing the folder on the table. "Texts, emails, recordings, all detailing your plan to move in temporarily, establish residency, and eventually force me out of my own home." I spread out several damning screenshots. "You called it a gradual takeover. You researched tenant rights to make it difficult for me to evict you. You even discussed how to convince me to add you to the deed." Jason looked stricken. "Amber, I can explain. You discussed making my life so miserable I'd eventually leave my own house," I continued, my voice steady despite the hurt beneath it. "You turned our family against me with lies. You took a copy of my key without permission. You tried to move in against my explicit refusal." Stephanie's demeanor shifted from shock to defensive anger. "You're twisting things. We were desperate." "You're not desperate. You're bankrupt due to your shopping addiction," I interrupted. "You have $95,000 in credit card debt from designer clothes and furniture. You saw my paid-off house as the solution to problems you created." The accuracy of this information visibly rattled her. "Who told you that? Who have you been talking to?" "It doesn't matter," I replied. "What matters is that I have everything documented, including your campaign of harassment following the failed moving attempt." I turned to my brother. "Jason, I'm speaking to you directly now. I have always been willing to help you find a new place, offer financial assistance for a security deposit, even help you create a budget. What I was never willing to do was let you and Stephanie take over my home." Jason's eyes filled with tears, the facade crumbling. "I didn't want to do any of this, Amber. It was Stephanie's idea. We're drowning in debt. The bankruptcy filing is already in process. We couldn't qualify for a new apartment with our credit. I didn't know what else to do." Stephanie shot him a venomous look. "Don't you dare blame this all on me. You agreed to everything." "Because you gave me no choice," he shouted, surprising both of us. "Every time I suggested something reasonable, you shut it down. Amber's house is the answer, Amber's house is our right. I've lost my sister because of your schemes." The raw emotion in his voice suggested a breaking point had been reached. Years of manipulation were finally giving way to clarity. I took a deep breath. "Here's what happens now. I'm willing to help you, Jason, but only you, and only if you agree to my terms." Stephanie scoffed. "You can't separate us. We're married." "I'm not trying to," I clarified. "I'm stating the conditions of my help. Jason, I'll connect you with a financial counselor who specializes in credit repair and bankruptcy. I'll help you find an affordable apartment and assist with the security deposit. But in return, you both need to admit the truth to our family. No more lies about me promising housing. No more manipulation campaigns." Jason looked at me with hope and shame intermingled. "You'd still help me after everything?" "You're my brother," I said simply. "But this is conditional help, and it comes with firm boundaries. My house is off limits forever. No key, no storage, no staying over. And if there's any more harassment or manipulation, I'll file for a restraining order and release all this evidence to the entire family." Stephanie stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous. We don't need your charity." "Sit down, Stephanie," Jason said with newfound firmness. "We have no leverage here. Amber has evidence of everything." "So what?" she challenged. "It's our word against hers." I shook my head. "It's your words against your own words. I have recordings, texts, emails, all in your voices and from your accounts. If I share these with the family, everyone will know exactly what you've been doing." The reality of their situation finally seemed to dawn on Stephanie. Her carefully constructed narrative was collapsing, and with it, her control over Jason and the situation. "Fine," she said bitterly. "We'll tell them we miscommunicated about the housing arrangement." "No," I insisted. "You'll tell them the complete truth, that there was never any offer or promise from me, that you planned to move in without permission, and that you've been manipulating everyone with false information." The standoff lasted several tense seconds before Jason nodded. "We'll tell them the truth. All of it." Over the next hour, we hammered out the details. Jason would call our parents tomorrow with both Stephanie and me present, confess everything, and apologize. They would send correction messages to every family member they'd misled. In return, I would help Jason find resources for their financial crisis, though I made it clear this was a one-time offer of assistance, not an ongoing bailout. By the time they left, something had fundamentally shifted. Jason seemed both broken and relieved, as if a heavy mask had finally been removed. Stephanie remained coldly angry but subdued, aware that her scheme had not only failed but backfired spectacularly. The following weeks brought significant changes. True to his word, Jason made the difficult calls to our family, admitting the deception. Some relatives were skeptical until I shared carefully selected pieces of evidence that confirmed his confession. My parents were devastated by the revelation but ultimately relieved that reconciliation was possible. With my help, Jason found a modest one-bedroom apartment they could afford even with their damaged credit. I paid the security deposit directly to the landlord and connected him with a reputable financial counselor. Their bankruptcy proceeded, a painful but necessary step toward eventual recovery. Stephanie remained distant and resentful, but the harassment stopped completely. Whether from fear of legal consequences or simple acceptance of defeat, she finally left me and my house alone. Jason later confided that they were in marriage counseling, though he wasn't optimistic about their future together. As for my home, I took additional steps to secure it. I installed a comprehensive security system with cameras, motion sensors, and automatic alerts. I changed all locks and added reinforced strike plates. I updated my will to include specific provisions about the house, ensuring my wishes would be clear and legally binding. Most importantly, I reclaimed the sense of peace and accomplishment that paying off my mortgage had initially brought. My house was truly mine, not just legally, but emotionally and psychologically. I had defended it against those who sought to take it, standing firm in the face of manipulation and pressure. 6 months after the confrontation, I hosted a reclaiming party with my true supporters, Tara, Mark, Tom, and other friends who had stood by me. We celebrated not just the house itself, but the boundaries I had established and maintained. As we toasted with champagne in my backyard, Tara raised her glass. To Amber, who paid off her house twice, once with money and once by defending it. The sentiment resonated deeply. Some costs can't be measured in dollars, but in courage, determination, and self-respect. My house was more than just a building, it was a symbol of my journey, my values, and my right to define my own boundaries, even when family tests them. So I ask you, have you ever had to stand up to family who felt entitled to what you've worked hard for? What would you have done in my situation? Do you think I was too harsh, or not harsh enough with Jason and Stephanie? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this story of standing up for yourself, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it. Remember, sometimes the strongest family bonds are the ones with healthy boundaries. Thank you for listening, and stay strong in protecting what's rightfully yours.